Welcome back. It is the NFC East Mixtape, the greatest podcast ever invented in the history of the world. You can hear this show on the Blog of the Boys Podcast Network, Bleeding Green Nation, Big Blue View, Hogs Haven, all four sites for NFC East teams across SB Nation. I am RJ Ochoa from Blog of the Boys. He is Brandon Lee Gowton from BGN. Brandon, congratulations, your Los Angeles Rams. They did it. Your favorite head coach, Sean McVay, he won the Super Bowl.
RJ, we don't have time for the shenanigans today because a little peek behind the curtain for the listeners. We have a meeting at 1 o'clock Eastern. It's currently 12:15 Eastern. So I can't even address that other than I will say that Sean McVay is one of the worst head coaches and biggest cowards to ever win the Super Bowl.
Peek behind the curtain. It is Tuesday, February 15th. This show goes out on Wednesdays, again, on all four podcast networks. You can also watch it on both the Blog and the Boys and Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channels. We saw the comments from the Eagles fans. Understand the algorithm issues associated with the internet. You know, that's what the meeting's about that we're going to, Brandon, is the algorithms of the internet. So you can now watch this as well on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel if you are subscribed there. Go subscribe there. Subscribe to Blog and the Boys. Subscribe to all these things. Visit all these sites. Help us out. You know, we like to talk about this stuff, and we appreciate you coming along for the ride. A bit of a shorter episode because we tend to be a little bit long-winded, Brandon, but a powerful episode nonetheless. You wanted to steal something that I did. You basically said, RJ, you had a brilliant idea on Monday Football Monday, one of the shows that I co-host on the SB Nation NFL show, where people should also subscribe and listen. You can hear BLG and I there multiple times throughout the week. You said, RJ, man, you just dominated. You're so creative. You got all these, wonderful ideas oozing out of that big, powerful brain of yours. We should use that on the NFC East Mixtape. That's exactly what you said, is it not?
I actually wanted to improve upon it because it wasn't that great. So I thought we could make it better. And obviously me being involved would do that. So that's kind of more of what I was thinking here. There's a quote about, stealing, like what's it, imitation or whatever. I'm looking for the quote. I can't find it.
Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery is the quote.
That's not it, actually. I was looking for good artist copy, great artist steal. And I think that gets attributed to Steve Jobs, but I'm going to steal the quote and say, actually, I came up with that and then make myself a great artist.
The true Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky quote, yes, in quotation marks. Interesting. Okay, so let's, we can just go ahead and steal the idea, do the idea, however you want to put it. Here's the idea. So the Super Bowl is over now. Super Bowl was on Sunday in case anybody somehow missed it. So what does that mean? The Super Bowl being over means what for the Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles, New York Giants, and Washington Commanders? Yes, it still feels so stupid. So Brandon and I each have something for each team. So Brandon, since this was your idea because it was my idea, do you want to go first? You get to pick whatever team you want to go with. The Super Bowl being over means what for who? Pick a team, go.
Okay, so I'm going to do this in my list as I have it ordered here. The Super Bowl being over means that the Eagles' hunt for a new starting quarterback has begun. And RJ, I don't know if you've seen it, but there have been rumors circulating out there. It started last week when Albert Breer, in a mailbag post for Sports Illustrated, had been asked a question about what's going to happen with Russell Wilson and his future. And Albert Breer, interestingly enough, said that he was pegging Russell Wilson for New Orleans, but he believes the Sean Payton being gone factor has changed things. And now he is penciling Russell Wilson into Philadelphia instead. So I thought that was interesting. And then yesterday, meaning Monday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Happy belated Valentine's Day to you, RJ. You had a good Instagram post, a little plug to your IG right there.
At RJ Ochoa, at Brandon Gowton, both of us.
Yes.
Follow us, see our photos, check us out, whatever. Yeah.
And you can see the picture. I'm not going to tell people what it is because I'll give them the incentive to go check it out. But Albert Breer also said the Eagles are among teams, quote, ready to take a major swing, end quote, at the quarterback position. And also in that group was the Commanders and the Panthers and the Broncos, all teams that those other teams, I think clearly a lot of people would think clearly need quarterbacks more than the Eagles do, since a lot of people think the Eagles can stick with Jalen Hurts. But I do not think the Eagles, especially after watching the Rams have success with Matt Stafford, and I'm not saying the situations are the same, but also the importance of the position being emphasized with Joe Burrow and how able the Bengals how far the Bengals were able to go, having a tough time getting through this with him. I just don't think they're settling for Jalen Hurts. I do think they're looking for an upgrade.
I like this one. To be clear, this is Brandon's. This is what it means for the Eagles. You didn't specify, just to be clear. I mean, so everybody knows. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And to be clear here, so the hunt beginning doesn't mean that the yield happens this offseason. Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just because the hunt has begun, like, I do feel like, while it might not feel this way for Eagles fans, I feel like the organization has to feel so much better about the quarterback position than they did a year ago. Because if you rewind the clock a year, it's what are we going to do about Carson? Who's going to take him? I find it amazing to think that the Colts paid for Carson Wentz and that there was a report over the weekend that they might cut him. He might go to Tampa. I mean, who knows? I would be truly I would honestly be impressed if Carson Wentz got another starting job, like another unquestioned starting job in the NFL. It would be very Chase Daniel from a financial perspective level of impressiveness. Like, how do you keep convincing people that you should be a starting quarterback in this league? And so I would love it if he somehow, some way was on the Jaguars. That would just be
that's not like happen.
Chef's kiss. I mean, look, if I'm allowed to dream, I mean, that's what I really want.
Doug Peterson does not want Carson Wentz back.
I know, but I see. Like, I also don't want the Colts to get rid of him because I want to see the Jaguars stunt on him. Like, I want to see him throw 5 picks against the Jaguars just to have Doug Peterson kind of have that moment. But anyway, so while you don't have a franchise quarterback, because you don't, I know there's the Jalen stands, but I think the season was what you needed from him. You got to go to the playoffs. You got to have some fun. Got to, cool, whatever. We got blown out by the Bucks, but you identified that he's not the guy. Like that's what it is. But at the same time, and this segues me into this is what it means for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts played moderately well. We're willing to say that? Is that as far as we're willing to go? Moderately well?
Sure.
Somewhat well? Kind of well? So in that sense, Jalen Hurts' stock is as high as it will ever be. That's this is what it means for the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you're Howie Roseman, you want to be the master trader. I do think he's very good at that. I know you love to bag. You hate everybody. You hate Jalen. You hate Howie. I don't know why. I'm sure you get this all the time. Be like, why do you even cover the Eagles? If you hate them so much, go find another team, whatever. But trade him now. Like if you're gonna, like, he's not the guy. Like, and I don't mean that like in a he's not the guy way, but he's not the guy. And so move on from him. Get something, like get some return on your investment, because it's not going to be with Jalen as a player. And we know the Eagles are not going to win the Super Bowl this season. I'm sorry, this coming season, that is. And so if you are truly in rebuild, ground up, ground zero mode, I mean, Jalen Hurts doesn't need to be a part of that. Like, we don't need to see another year of this to know that Nick Sirianni can develop an attack that can run the ball. Get somebody else, figure something out. Let Gardner Minshew have that season. I mean, I think that would be more prosperous for the overall cause.
I don't think we're going to learn as much about Jalen Hurts as people seem to think we will. Like, his biggest defenders. Like, I think it's going to be pretty similar to this year, which is fine if you want to make the playoffs, like be 9-8, like that kind of, like, just make the playoffs as a wild card team, that kind of ceiling, that kind of upside. But I don't think you're doing much more than that. I do think it's an interesting concept when you think of maybe the Seahawks being trade partners with the Eagles when Jalen Hurts is involved, because Jalen Hurts has shown he can be effective in a very run-heavy offense. And what does Pete Carroll want to do up there in Seattle? So I think that's the kind of quarterback they would like. Now, I kind of find it weird to reconcile that Russ could be on the move with Pete still being there, because it feels like, why is he going to be on board with
BLG? Go Birds. Go Birds. Go Birds, baby.
With the Seahawks like taking a step back and getting, worse, quite frankly, at quarterback. But I don't know. Maybe the decision isn't fully up to him, and maybe the ownership looks at the prospect of picks and thinks that Hurts has enough potential and that outweighs it all. And maybe Russ just wants out anyway, so they just have to get what they can for him. But yeah, I think it's a fair point that you're making. I do like, and just I want to clarify, or I want to ask you, like, do you think it's as high as it will ever be in the NFL or just with the Eagles?
In the NFL, period.
Okay, wow.
By the way, on the subject of Russell Wilson, he did speak with our friend Rob Stats Guerrera on the SB Nation NFL show last week. You can listen to that on the SB Nation NFL podcast feed, or you can watch it on the SB Nation NFL YouTube channel if you're watching this on either the Blog and the Boys or Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channels. I spoke with Aaron Andrews and Dick Butkus and Michael Gallup on the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel if you want to check those out as well. Super Bowl Radio Row offers a lot of fun opportunities, but I don't know, man. I mean, like, I've kind of come around on the idea of Russ to Philly, like, being probable or being likely, at least. It felt impossible to me for a long time, but like, in my mind when I close my eyes, and let's be clear, I've been complimented on this Russell impression, so it's like I really want to like lean into it because I know I'm good at it. But
Get a whole season's worth of it.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
couldn't you just see him like during the like press conference, like sitting next to Sirianni and Roseman, just being like, I was watching a documentary and they say the eagle's the only bird that can achieve a higher altitude than a Seahawk, and so that's what I feel like I'm here to do. I know how to win a championship. I know how to build a pedigree. I know all about that. I'm here to grind, and how we were talking before we came up on stage. I mean, that 2012 draft. I mean, it almost happened, and so the time is now, baby. Go Birds. Go Birds. Go Hawks. I mean, guys, it's a new thing. We're birds. We're green. It's all good. Let's go. You can see it.
The last thing I'll say in this is that, and I've said this on BGN Radio, but I want to get your take on it real quick, or correct me if it sounds wrong. When the Eagles made that trade last year, not only the Carson Wentz trade, which was obviously about getting rid of him in part, but getting that pick, and then the bigger trade really to move down from 6 to 12 like they did,
and then up to 10. They paid the Cowboys to let the Cowboys draft Michael Parsons. That needs to be said forever.
But to get the Miami first round pick is what I'm saying. Like, they didn't just do that to get. The goal wasn't just to get 3 first round picks to get 3 defenders. Like, if you think that, I just think you're just wrong. That doesn't mean it won't happen. But that was clearly not the thinking. The thinking in mind was to get the quarterback. And again, that doesn't mean the Eagles hunt, as you said, will end up with that guy. But that was the intended purpose. So if you don't think if you think they're not gonna try, I don't think you're paying attention.
I also think that on the subject of SB Nation NFL show interviews, last year, you will recall, Brandon, in the Radio Row process, I interviewed Devontae Smith. And I remember talking to you before that because there was a lot of chatter about him potentially winding up with the Eagles when Philadelphia still had the 6th overall pick. And so I think that is still kind of slept on, that he was the target at 6. And you tell me, but maybe there was this acceptance of, oh man, now we missed out on Devontae when they traded back from 6 to 12. And so to still land him, even though you had to trade up to 10, I mean, kind of worked out. And the Devontae pick is even more of a scream in your face thing that this wasn't about defense. There's clearly this setting up of the offense with hopefully this top wide receiver, because Jalen Reagor is clearly not it. For the future to come in and have an easier path. At least.
You know what the pick the Eagles gave up to trade up with the Cowboys? It was from the Carson Wentz trade, the 3rd round pick that they got from the Colts. So there you go.
Everything is connected. Okay, so the Philadelphia Eagles got to go first on this episode, which kind of breaks rules because you have to be in the lead in the NFC East to go first, like the Dallas Cowboys have been. The Dallas Cowboys won the NFC East in 2021, just so everybody's fully clear. So that means we have to now segue to the Dallas Cowboys, BLG. So the Super Bowl is over. What does that mean for the Dallas Cowboys? This week at Blogging the Boys has been a lot of introspection, a lot of what's the problem, what are we concerned about. On Tuesday, did an episode of the 750 with Bobby Belt from 105 The Fan, filling in for Tony Casillas, talked about questions that nobody is asking when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. Because there's a lot of things that everybody's kind of circling around, but things that are a little bit more under the surface. And so this kind of goes without saying, but the Super Bowl is over, cements it as reality. The clock is officially ticking on Mike McCarthy. And call it the Sean Payton clock if you want. I actually feel like, did you see the report, Brandon, that Sean Payton I think he spoke to Mike Flory about this, that he might call Mike McCarthy to kind of smooth things over with him because of everything that's been happening lately?
Which is weird, yeah.
Well, I don't know what Sean's intentions are.
Mike, I'm totally not going to take your job in the future.
Well, so I actually am super impressed with Sean by this because some people will be like, oh, what a great guy. No, that is purely Sean getting even more in Mike's head. That is, totally. Sean was on the Dan Patrick show when he first retired and was talking about some game situation. And then literally himself said, now ask me about Dallas at the end of the playoff game. This dude, and in one weird way, I sort of am in love with this. I am kind of in love with how aggressively he is attacking Mike McCarthy's job. And I love that he's just this buzzard circling around the would-be dead body. And in a way, I think that look, I wouldn't even say come around on McCarthy. I maintain all the things I said and believed in. They were true at the time, but there was just this collapse that is impossible to defend and justify. And so I'm at a point now where, you know what? Fine, let's do this thing. And I wrote something last week that said Mike McCarthy, at the time, whether Kellen Moore was going to return or not, then the Dolphins ended up hiring Mike McDaniel. Mike McCarthy should call plays. I want to see it because I want to see this dude go down his way or go or fly his way. I want to see it be fully, purely, absolutely, in an unadulterated sense, Mike McCarthy, so that we can't be here a year from now and he say, you know what, I never had a chance to install or call my offense. I was saddled with Kellen Moore for the first 3 years. Now in 2023, when I'm calling the shots, it's going to be different. No, I want this to be Frank Sinatra style, McCarthy's way. And I think that if I was McCarthy, I would want that. And I'm actually unimpressed that he doesn't want that. I mean, I'm unimpressed that he's not willing to say, man, my job, my future in the NFL is on the line. I need to take the reins here. And he's just like content handing that off to Kellen Moore, this dude who he's known for only 2 years. That's just such an insane gamble to take. So I like that the heat's getting turned up on him, whether Sean Payton is the future head coach of the Cowboys or not. But there's no question about it. I thought the conversations a year ago about, well, if the Cowboys disappoint, is Mike McCarthy on the hot seat? I thought that was so stupid because of the way 2020 unfolded. But all of that is fair. Let's turn the heat up. Let's sweat it all out. We got to get in the sauna, BLG, you and me. Let's do it.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll find a time. I thought you were going to take, the Sean Payton kind of angle, so I didn't go that way with mine. I do think there is something to what you're saying there about letting a guy like succeed or fail on his own. That's what the Eagles did with Chip Kelly in 2015. And I thought that was the right approach. It obviously didn't work out, but I like that they did that because it was crystal clear. Okay, he failed. He was in charge. Time to move on. You know it. There's no mystery. It's like, oh, well, what if this happened? No, like it was all clear as day. He had his chance. He didn't succeed. It was time to move on. I think there's, value in learning that kind of information. My thing for the Cowboys is that an off season without much juice begins. Like, I don't think the Cowboys are in a spot where they can like change a whole lot and don't necessarily need to in some cases. So that's not all bad. But Over the Cap did a off-season resources ranking recently. I don't know if you saw this on their website. Did. Okay, well, I'm sure you saw the Dallas Cowboys were 31st. They were the penultimate team in those rankings because they rank 30th in cap space, and obviously they can clear some up with restructures. Dak Prescott will be a big one in there, but currently 30th in cap room. They are 19th when it comes to draft capital, so nothing special. They are 26 in free agent snaps in terms of like guys they can lose, and we've talked about before, especially right after the season ended, like some of the key losses they could be facing. So I just, and the exact quote from Over the Cap was, not an ideal position for the disappointing Cowboys. So I just don't think this offseason has a lot of juice outside of the Sean Payton factor. And even then, that's like a year away, so you're still like looking down the road. That's not like about 2022. And I just think even if like I'm wrong about this and the Cowboys make some big moves, it just like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter until they can finally prove they can get over the hump. Like the excitement can only go so far because of how Mike McCarthy and how the ending to 2021 kind of put like, or has this ceiling on the Cowboys. Like it has a kind of them capped out until they prove people wrong.
The next year thing feels very much like the new Lord of the Rings show. It's like, okay, like when you find out, it's like, oh, it's not coming out for 2 years. It's like, well, what good does this like do me to be excited about it? Or like, like if you've been waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6, it's like, okay, cool. Like, what good does this teaser do me? Like, I still have to wait forever. Like, this doesn't help the process feel any better whatsoever, especially if you're offering me like no substance. Not like we got the Lord of the Rings trailer during the Super Bowl, which again, your boy Sean McVay won.
Looked bad, by the way.
But
that's my take.
I mean, I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too, but it didn't look great.
Have you read the books? You strike me as somebody who read the books.
I did when I was young, so it's hard. Like,
right.
We're talking about 4th, 5th grade. It's been forever.
Right. Okay. I totally agree with you that this is a great word. It's a juiceless offseason for the Cowboys. Like you're talking about though, like legitimate and substantial juice, like, like capital and, salary cap space and draft capital and things like that. So the Senior Bowl was a few weeks ago at this point now. Do you know how many people covered Jerry Jones's like discussion there? And this was something that Bobby Belt actually mentioned on the episode of 750 I talked about. Do you know how many people were there in the like scrum to cover Jerry Jones at the Senior Bowl?
I'm gonna say like 5.
2. And one of them works for DallasCowboys.com. And like, that's kind of it, man. Like it's kind of like, I do think we're at this point of like, people are so like whatever. Like I think I speak for Cowboys fans, or at least a lot of Cowboys fans. Like my read on this is the most tapped out, apathetic, disinterested, depressed, mad, upset that people have been and my comp is honestly since 44-6. Like nobody was in it all excited because the next year they didn't have a first round pick because they traded for Roy Williams, and so I mean like people are just like fed up, and I think like a lot of that is being heaped at Jerry. You know, I know we talked about it then, but Jerry after the season ended jumped on the radio on 105 through the Fan, huffed and puffed, and you know, oh I'm so mad I would do anything to change this, blah blah. Well, what'd you do? Like, you didn't do a single thing. Like you hired Robert Prince to be your wide receivers coach, who the Saints now were interviewing for their offensive coordinator position, actually. But like, you did nothing. Like, what should we believe? Why should we believe that this is going to be any different when you are literally just going to run this whole thing back? You know, I've talked about Super Bowl Radio Row. The triplets, namely Troy and Emmett, spent most of their appearances kind of dragging this team. Like, so now it's reached this point where, like, you know, the alma mater greats are fed up. And, like, you know, the 750 at Blogging the Boys is a show with Tony Casillas, who won 2 Super Bowls with the Cowboys. And he jokes all the time about how his rings, like, date him. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't like to wear them because he doesn't want people to think he's old or whatever because of how long ago they were. I mean, the freaking Bengals just played in the Super Bowl, dude. I mean, so, yeah, I think they are one of the least interesting teams in the NFL this offseason.
I think so. And I think even if you want to point as one of the most interesting things, like, okay, Cowboys first round pick, that's been interesting the past couple of years because we got Micah Parsons, got CeeDee Lamb, sorry, the 88 in my mind.
But see, like, to interrupt you, so Micah, fantastic, A+, right? We both agree.
Mm-hmm.
CeeDee Lamb, one of the things Bobby and I talked about on that episode, this is a good episode to kind of, if you haven't yet, Cowboys fans, go back in your feed and listen. CeeDee Lamb's kind of been a disappointment. You know, he hasn't lived up. He hasn't been lived up to the hype. He's, you know, a year ago, I fought tooth and nail that he was better than Justin Jefferson because the argument was he didn't get a whole season of Dak, you know, whatever. But obviously, you know, this season gives us a lot more data. So he's been, I mean, is he a bust? No, but he has not become the alpha that we expected. Maybe we're guilty of overhyping him, but he hasn't become that. 2019, they didn't have a first round pick because they traded it for Amari Cooper, worth a first. Shout out to the t-shirt that you love. 2018, Leighton Vander Esch, who's going to walk this offseason. 2017, when they drafted Taco Charlton over now Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt. 2016, Zeke. I mean, you know, like their first round picks have not been, like, they're really popular names, but they have not been the quality players that people think they are. Again, Micah aside.
Yeah, and my point was with that, like, you're 24th in the draft. So it's not like, you know, the most exciting position to be in as opposed to last year where you had 10 and then moved down to 12. Like, there's a big jump there. The Cowboys actually have the worst possible pick you could have from any team that lost in the wild card at number 24. So, you know, just kind of that takes away some of the juice again. It's a late first round pick.
Sucks. Tough cookies. All right, so who do we want to go to next? We have the Commanders, the mighty Commanders, and the Giants. Where do you want to go first? I have a Commanders thing to get off my chest, by the way.
All right, then why don't you start with that?
Well, I just want to say, so I talked about last week with Stabby when he was here how when I was in San Antonio, we were the home of the San Antonio Commanders, or at the time on ESPN San Antonio, what is now San Antonio Sports Star. And so I hosted the pre and post game show with my man James Pledger, great friend of mine. Pledge and I, every pre and post game show, obviously prepped for the game, discussed the game afterwards. But on the pre-game show, BLG, every single San Antonio Commanders game, Pledge and I, we would do the pregame show for 2 hours, and at the very end, as we would throw it to Jason Minix, who was the play-by-play announcer, Pledge would say, as the final words, he would say, "Let's ride." That was kind of his little catchphrase. And again, the AAF did not really last a long time, but he still did do it for every single game. On Sunday night, after the Super Bowl ended, the Washington Commanders official Twitter account tweeted like this poster that was like like inspired by The Last Dance. Like, dude, like, it's the thing. Like, The Last Dance was so long ago at this point. Like, we don't need to keep, you know, creating content. Like, get something new. Like, I'm so sick of the, like, and I took that personally meme. But anyway, but so it was basically that poster, and it was called, like, The First Dance or something. And the caption said, "Let's ride." They literally are stealing every single thing. So shout out to James Pledger. They took your line. My Commanders thing is super vague and super ambiguous, but that's kind of who they are. They have to get it together. Like that's what it is. And dude, like, cause And I actually think it makes sense because last year they've been in this funk, right, as the football team for 2 years, and with Ron Rivera, whatever, like all that's gone. Like, and I don't mean it's all gone. They still have a lot of very serious issues plaguing the franchise. But as far as the football team is concerned, no longer pun intended, it has to happen now. Like, it has to. There's no more excuses. There's no more, oh, Alex Smith and we had Dwayne Haskins and everything. Like, no, you've had enough time, Ron Rivera. Man, they had Ron Rivera out on Good Morning Football last week, like pushing the Commander's name and wearing the Letterman jacket was so silly to me, whatever. But it has to happen. Like, if it's not going to happen now, you have to move on from Ron Rivera. I think he is also on the hot seat entering 2022.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of put up or shut up time. It's getting to that point for him. They have to figure out something at quarterback, which pivots into my now that the Super Bowl is over, the countdown to Jimmy G or Carson Wentz in Washington has begun. And I think that's exactly the kind of quarterback who the Commanders are going to have. They're not going to have someone who is, it's not going to be Russell Wilson. It's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. They're not going to get that marquee name. They can get someone who has fake accomplishments like Jimmy G in terms of his NFC Championship game,
or Carson in terms of his Super Bowl win because it was fake and it doesn't count, right?
Yeah, and that's going back to the Carson Wentz of it all. Like, he might get a starting job somewhere, but it's going to be with this kind of team. It's not going to be somewhere like the Colts who have a good setup around him. It's going to be somewhere who is someone who's pretty desperate for a starter.
The Lions or the Panthers or something like that, right?
You could easily be the Panthers quarterback too. It's that kind of situation they're looking at. They can't obviously just stick with what they have. And I think, relying on a rookie, although I could kind of see Kenny Pickett end up there. Like, I could easily envision that happening. Kind of just like this safe quarterback, and maybe but maybe it's both. Maybe they take him and maybe they also bring in Carson Wentz or Jimmy G. I think Jimmy G might end up with the Steelers. So I'm weighing that in my mind because I could easily see them going after him. But I think it's one of those two guys. So I think that's the countdown has begun to that.
I've said this before. I really think I haven't tailored it this way. I think if Kirk Cousins if his first team had been anybody else, had been Detroit or Carolina or Chicago or Seattle or Pittsburgh or Tennessee or whatever, if his first team had been any non-Washington team, he would be the top option for the Commanders this offseason. It's like, my point is, it's only the personal history with him that is prohibiting them from going to get him, in my opinion. You're nodding for the podcast audience, so you agree with that?
Yeah, it's that kind of caliber quarterback, absolutely.
Right. And so I guess the way I would word this, because I agree with you entirely, everything that they have done, everything football related, because there's a lot of other terrible things, but everything that they have done has been getting fake excited for. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like they have to convince themselves that it's cool, because they're like, this Commanders thing, it's a nod to history, these uniforms are sick, they're ill, everything is such fake energy. It's not, big loser energy, it's fake energy. This is FE, baby, like the elemental symbol.
What is symbol FE? Is that for?
I don't know. Look it up.
It's iron, right?
I think it is iron.
Iron sharpens iron.
They're the perfect team to be like iron. They're gonna have some sort of off-season hype video that's like iron sharpens iron. The Commanders carried cannons made out of iron in their battles and things like that. Is it iron? Have you looked it up?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Well, are you going to look it up? What number is it on the periodic table? I would like to know too.
I have no idea.
Well, that's why you're looking it up. You have the power of the internet at your fingertips.
It is 26.
Shout out to Clinton Portis, former commander. But
stretch.
But yeah, I mean, this is so, and to your point, it's going to be they're going to take total and complete ownership of the loose accomplishments of either of these quarterbacks. It will be, I think, a similar PR statement to when the Cardinals hired Cliff Kingsbury and tried to jump on all these other accomplishments. It'll be like, man, we got this dude. And then it'll be, well, Jimmy Garoppolo's been to, 2 NFC championship games. Dak Prescott hasn't been to any. How can you say that Dak Prescott's the best quarterback in the division? How dare you put Dak Prescott on your all NFC East team on the NFC East Mixtape? Because of course, he is the quarterback of the NFC East Mixtape. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, Carson would be awesome. Give me that theater. Yeah. I would love to see that so much. I'm going to be so upset if he's not on the Colts because I really, really, really want to see him play the Eagles at some point.
I'm pretty sure he is not going to be on the Colts.
I know.
But yeah, he would make Washington so much more like easy to root against. Not that like they're like anyone's rooting for them right now, but they're kind of just like irrelevant. Like they're not super hateable just because like I don't know, like who do you really hate on
Well,
Washington?
like to hate them, they have to be good. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like
Or
there has
relevant.
to
Yeah.
there has to be like a back and forth. And so like they're nothing. Like they're
Like no one hates Ron Rivera, like because he's kind of likable, like guy,
yeah, he's a
and
cool
stuff off the
dude.
field. Yeah, so like they don't really have someone that you hate, and certainly not a quarterback like Taylor Heineke. You can't hate him. He's not.
Well,
He's
Jonathan
like,
Allen isn't popular these days.
sure, but like outside of him, and understandably so, to be clear, but outside of him, and how much can you really hate like a defensive lineman? Like it's not like the biggest target. Like quarterback's an easy target, and Carson Wentz being on there, Jimmy G wouldn't be. Like Jimmy G is like he's handsome, he seems to be like fine or whatever from a leadership standpoint and everything. You would hate him as a rival by default, but like I think Carson Wentz is so much more unlikable and would be the perfect quarterback for rival fans.
To that point, their two best players are really not hateable. Like Terry McLaurin's awesome. You know what I mean? Like there's no like hate or vitriol that we have for him.
Mm-hmm.
And Chase Young, like there's just an acknowledgement that he's awesome too. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So who was the last player on their team that you like hated?
D'Angelo Hall.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Because he was like he thought he was like so much better than he really was, and yeah.
I went to the Cowboys Christmas Day game against the Eagles. I think we've talked about this before in 2006. When Jeff Garcia, who also is not popular these days, led the Eagles to victory over the Cowboys. And the week before that, the Cowboys played the Falcons on, I believe it was Thursday Night Football. And that was the T.O. spit in D'Angelo Hall game. And there was all this chatter that he was going to be suspended. And I was terrified that I wasn't going to get to see T.O. On Christmas Day. But thankfully he got to play. So
future podcast guest.
That we're working on that hard, so everybody knows. We really, really want to make that happen. I can't think of one that I like hated. I just like I'm really maybe Santana Moss. That might be my answer. I just like because he was kind of a cowboy killer. Kind of had some moments. Maybe Deshaun Jackson when he first joined them. I was not fond of RG3. I found that to be so annoying. That was not a fun time. So. Yeah. Like, and as I know you hate Kirk, but you never like hated him in this way. You know what I mean? Like you hate his existence. You don't really hate him as a player. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like the Sean McVay thing for me. It's just like he's just so overrated, and it's just incredible. And he's also just clearly a loser.
Okay, it's time to move on to the New York Football Giants, who ruined our Brian Daboll episode with Ed Valentine. Thank you, Giants, for that. Are you ready for mine? Do you want to go first? I've gone first the last two. Like, how are you feeling here?
Yeah, I'll go first to close it out. With the Super Bowl over, I think, and the eyes turning to the NFL draft, I think you could make the argument the Giants control the draft. Everyone loves that each year. It's like this team, the draft runs through them, or they control the draft. And I think when I say that, there's some basis because the Giants have the number 5 overall pick, which I believe is a prime trade down spot right ahead of the Panthers, who are clearly in the quarterback market. So if you're looking to get up, draft a quarterback and potentially the first one off the board, you might want to get to that number 5 spot. And obviously with the Giants also owning already the number 7 pick, it's such a no-brainer move for them to trade, or it's like really easy for them to do because they're already picking a couple spots later anyway. And they're going to get a good haul. So I think like they really control the draft at the top because I think Jacksonville is locked in. I think Detroit is locked in. I think Houston might actually like Davis Mills, or I think they're going to stay.
I think that Houston's a candidate to trade down too. Like they're in such a like now is not our priority space that they don't need that pick right now.
But I could see them sticking. It's not a definite that they move down. We'll see. I think the Jets stick because they have their quarterback. So I think the Giants could potentially be a trade down candidate. And you have to remember, Dave Gettleman actually did trade down last year for the first time in literally ever. But it's a new
How can
GM.
I forget that inspired a What If episode of the NFC East Mixtape last year?
I don't think you forgot, but it's just kind of, we're not used to, I'm saying we're conditioned to the Giants not doing anything and not making these kind of moves, but I think they could. I think they might be realistic about where they are and know that they might need to trade down and get some more picks, in part just because, too, to potentially have quarterback flexibility. If they are sticking with Daniel Jones and they can't get their guy, maybe they can trade down, get a first in next year's draft, and have that ability for next year. So I think, with all eyes kind of turning to the draft, obviously we have free agency coming up, but, a lot of big draft heads out there. I think the Giants control the draft, and I think that's where it turns to.
I like that. Who have been the control the draft teams as of late? I mean, because I think the take is going to become the NFC East controls the draft with the Eagles draft capital as well. But you're right. I think the Giants have like a higher level stake of ownership, but
they're kind of setting the board though. Like, since they're at the top, like they can like really kind of influence how this goes and which team they might like want to make a deal with, and they're okay with taking a quarterback. So yeah,
I think the Browns. What was the year they took? Was it O.J. Howard? Not O.J. Howard. David Njoku.
Yeah.
Who else did they take that year? Man, my mind.
So 29, 18.
18. Well, that was 18 was Baker's year. Yeah, 18 was Baker, and then they have another one of the top five because it went Baker, Darnold. No, not Darnold. Baker, Saquon. How can we forget Saquon? Baker, Saquon. Then that was the Darnold draft and the Allen draft. I think that was the year. I don't know if you're looking at the 2018 NFL draft right now, but it was Baker, and then at one point they had Njoku. Oh no, I'm thinking of the Njoku Jabril Peppers draft. No, they traded for Jabril Peppers. I don't know. I'm so
they
lost.
Drafted Jabril Peppers.
I'm so lost. That was it then. That was it. Because I remember the photo of David Njoku and Jabril Peppers together.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter. This is not the AFC North mix.
The point is,
if it were, we'd be lamenting the Bengals Super Bowl loss to BLG's Sean McVay's Rams. So. But anyway, okay. Are you pulling up that draft, or are you ready for my? This is what it means for the Giants.
I'm ready for what this is what it means. But I was looking back at last year to like say who we could maybe say controls the draft. Maybe you could say the Bengals because everyone thought they were going to take Sewell and they ended up taking Chasen. I don't know what you would say, but I think
there is that pivot point where something like something that wasn't chalk for all the mocks happens. And but even then there were a lot of mocks that had the Bengals taking Jamar, but it was this like fork in the road that created two different alternate realities for the rest of the NFL. So, okay. This is what the Super Bowl being over means for the New York Giants. Again, kind of grandiose, but that's kind of my style. This is the most important offseason ever lately for the Giants. It really is. Like
ever lately.
But like this has kind of like the Commanders, like it's and I do respect I guess the introspection that John Mara has had. We've talked about this, how we buy and believe that he was embarrassed, and unlike Jerry Jones, and I am so depressed that I have to compare the two, but Jerry's out here saying like, I would do anything, I'm pissed, blah blah, and then he did nothing, like did absolutely nothing. But John Mara comes out and says, I've never been this embarrassed. Like, this is the lowest of the low. We're in the bad place, the dark place. This is the darkest timeline. What does he do when everyone thinks he's going to run it back with Joe Judge? He says, you know what? Enough. Like that to me, like, I don't know how the Cowboys can watch the Rams, and see the Rams carry all this dead money from Jared Goff and feel like we can't cut Zeke. It's just impossible. We can't do it. We can't move on from Zeke. It's impossible. Look, I mean, how could anybody survive? And I love that the Giants are willing to say, you know what, Joe Judge, we don't want to be the team that fires another head coach after a 2-year stretch, but it's not working. We have to get this right. We have to move on right now. Brian Daboll, Wink Martindale, our favorite guy we talked about, etc. You've got the 3 first-round picks. You control the draft like BLG said. And if Brian Daboll resuscitates, like that's honestly maybe one of the biggest what ifs in the entire NFL. If Brian Daboll resuscitates Daniel Jones's career, that completely changes the landscape of the NFC East, and that completely changes the landscape of the NFC. With Brady retiring, maybe Rodgers is gone, maybe Russ. Well, Russ is staying. Go Birds, baby, go Birds. But like that could be a big old deal if Daniel Jones, like you were higher on him than most people or less down on him than most people. If Brian Daboll gets him a fraction of the way closer to Josh Allen, like this is an important offseason for them. They have, like, we can agree, they have some pieces there for Daniel Jones and for Brian Daboll to work with, and they haven't had anybody competent there that's been able to work with them. They finally got some competent people, so things could change a lot for the Giants.
At the end of the 2022 season, let's say Washington, like they need to win a playoff game almost, or like have a winning record, double digit win. Like that's that kind of bar for them. I think we were just talking about with Ron Rivera. Giants don't need to do that. Like realistically, I mean, that would be nice for their sake if they did, but they need to end the 22 season with like, okay, we have at least the start of a foundation here. We have a foundation we can build on. We need to maybe figure out quarterback still. We'll see. Like, but we have pieces here. Like we have something to build on moving forward that is positive. Like that's what they need to do. So how does that happen? Like you're laying the foundation this offseason. So yes, I agree with that. Like you have to get some of those pieces in place. There's a lot of different ways they could go in the draft. Going back to my point, they could trade down, maybe get a future first round pick next year. They could stick at 5 and 7 and get two potentially really blue chip players who are big cornerstones for them moving forward. They have some big decisions to make with those. So yeah, this is a really crucial offseason for them. Not in terms of like they need to elevate again into this playoff team already, but this is like this has to be the beginning of something. You have to be able to at the end of this year look and be like, okay, they're on the right track and they're building and they're growing. It can't be another like, well, you have to give them time. It can't be that. It can't be another like you just have to give them more time. You have to be patient. No, like you need to see some kind of actual foundation, and that was what we didn't see. Like people would try to say like that's what was the case after Joe Judge's first. No, that was not there at all.
It was there in a hollow sense because they were like, "Oh, we barely lost the division." Yeah, you barely lost it to a team that went 7-9. Like it wasn't real. It was a facade. It was a mirage.
Yeah, but who did like you really feel good about, like on that roster? Even like, wow, this player is a stud for years to come. Like, no one really. They need that this year. They need to find some guys who are like, wow, this is a player. All right, this is a good thing that we have going for us. This is something we can hang our hat on. That's always we talk about that. Like, we can hang our hat on this thing, an identity, a player, a coach, like something. They have to have something. And again, I think it starts this offseason.
My bold NFC East take is that I think the Giants, I don't think they're cutting Saquon because they just picked up his 5th-year option last year. Like, I don't think they're in that position, but I think the Giants start to move on, even if it's just from like a utilization standpoint, from Saquon sooner than the Dallas Cowboys start to move on from Zeke. Like, I think the Cowboys are going to continue to force the Zeke thing much longer than the Giants are going to continue to force the Saquon thing. And Zeke's a better player, but yeah. I mean, it's time for both. You know what I'm saying?
But they're also, again, the Cowboys are more stuck with Zeke. Like they basically have to keep him this year, whereas the Giants can and should trade Saquon this offseason for like, I don't know, 4th round pick, 5th round, like whatever. Whatever you can get.
Who's doing like nobody's doing that though. That's the problem.
I don't know. You have a dumb team out there, like I don't know, like not Carolina because they already have Christian McCaffrey, but I don't know. There's probably a dumb enough team out there.
The Houston Texans did trade for David Johnson once upon a time. So I mean, yeah, it is possible. Okay. As we wrap up, BLG, because we have the meeting to get to, your thoughts on the Super Bowl halftime show, subject of much consternation around the world.
Dr. Dre, Snoop, still got it. That was my takeaway. I was like, still got it. Also feel old because it was like, wow, all these songs are pretty old and I know all of them. And I can only imagine what people younger think in terms of like, and my sense was that like, who are these guys from some of Gen Z, which is pretty depressing.
Yeah. There was the Survivor season, Millennials versus Gen X, but this felt like Millennials versus Gen Z. You know what I'm saying? Like this felt very much like this. It was almost like the world being like, okay, Millennials, you're old now. Like this was the like official.
That's not a TikTok star up there on stage. Who is that?
Right. Speaking of Survivor, new season coming out in less than a month. So we got some stuff going on there. Maybe we'll try to get Danny McRae on, former Survivor player, former Cowboy.
Survivor loser, just like the Cowboys.
Wow.
Couldn't get it done in the playoffs. Couldn't get it done when, it was coming down to the end.
Brandon, it's meeting time. All right. So with that being said,
I will not say that to his face, by the way, because he'd destroy me.
He would be our second Survivor contestant to be on the show, which would be very cool. So, and at that point, we'd have to like get one that roots for every team because we already had
Jervis for the Eagles, and then I don't know who for the Giants. Maybe Tony? No, I can't get him. But I don't know.
No, Tony would scare us. But okay, let's leave. The final words belong to you, but they have to be hummed in a tune. Ready, set, go.
Listen to the SB Nation NFL show.
Later, everybody.